People often run into financial difficulties, and when they do, they come to you and they ask you for help. One of the difficulties that I want to address today is when somebody needs a loan ASAP. They needed a loan yesterday. They need to get something done. They need to buy a car. They need to, buy a home. They need to clear up some bills. Whatever the case may be, they need a loan. So we needing the loan. They came to you, and now they're asking you to co-sign. No, never. Never, ever, ever, ever. Please say no. That is what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about two financial boundaries that everybody needs to set when it comes to their money. All right, the first one is obviously co-signing. Co-signing is when somebody comes to you and they need a loan and they say, hey, listen, because of my credit or because of my financial situation, maybe I don't have enough money and they're not qualifying me. I need to put you on the loan with me. I need your help. They ask you to be a co-signer because number one, you have better credit, and number two, you might have a little bit more money than them. And basically, you're like an assurance for the loan. You're a backup for the loan. But that's something that you don't want to do. Co-signing becomes a straining point when it comes to the friendship. Now, here's how it goes with co-signing. If you tell them yes and you end up doing the co-signing for them, it's going to be where you're now financially responsible for that loan, or for making those payments. Let's say you know the person for years, you trust them. It could even be a family member, a relative. It could even be your significant other. Okay, they ask you to back them up by co-signing. You've co-signed and you've taken out this loan, this financial arrangement, this financial burden now. And let's say the person stops making the payments. Who do you think the creditor or that bank is going to come after? It's going to be you. First of all, they're going to write you, they're going to call you, they're going to ask you why the payments aren't being made. The banks is not going to care if you say, listen, I'm not the primary borrower, I'm only a co-borrower, co-signer. They're going to say, listen, you took out that loan, your social security number was ran, and you're just as responsible for that loan. That is what you do when you become a co-signer on a loan. You're basically telling that creditor or the bank that you are just as much responsible for the loan. Even if the person defaults, you're still responsible for the loan. Now, in the long run, that could actually ruin your financial situation or your credit. Story time. I knew a lady a few years ago. We lived in the same building together. I mean, I had decent credit at the time. I guess she thought maybe I was doing super well. I don't know. But again, at the time, I'm just trying to manage my money. She would often come and talk to me and, vent and say, listen, we want to move out of here. My husband and I want to buy our first home. I'm like, great, wonderful. This is good. But she said, there's one problem. She says, we can't qualify for a mortgage. I said, well, why can't you? You got a job. He got a job. I assume your credit's decent if you're talking to a mortgage broker and a realtor. She said, yes, we can talk to the mortgage broker. We've spoken to the realtor. We even looked at several houses, but we can't qualify. We basically need a co-signer, another person to be on there, although my husband's name can go on the loan. So I had to ask, because you don't brought your business to me and you want me to help you to get into your business, so I'm going to ask you why. She said the reason why she was looking for a co-signer is because a few years ago, her husband had co-signed for a family member on another house, and this before they met. She said as a result, that person that her husband co-signed for is now in foreclosure. She was even crying. She was like, this is horrible. She was like, it's a very close family member. My husband was only trying to help, but the person later defaulted. And she said they defaulted because they lost their job and the whole 9 yards. And again, in life, things happen. And this is the reason why, maybe we feel bad for people, but at the same time, we got to think about the long run and the big picture. Like, if I do this for you today, is it going to, be beneficial to me in the end, or is it going to ruin me in the end financially? So going back, she said, the husband helped somebody and they basically, because of their foreclosure, ruined her husband's credit. Now their debt is the husband's debt. So as a result, when the banks, try to qualify them, do the numbers, he already has that old debt on his credit. Make a long story short, the gentleman cannot at this point co-sign with his wife, which was, the friend that I knew. He could not co-sign with her, or he can't get on the loan with her because he already has that old debt that he's carrying from helping somebody to co-sign many, many years ago out of the goodness of his heart. And that brings me to my next point. Helping somebody, you're doing it because you're kind, because you're sweet, or because you're very caring. But at the end of the day, it comes back and it bites you in the butt. And that's what happened to that couple. Now, fast forward a little bit. She now wants me, or wanted me at the time. And again, this is many years back. She wanted me to help her to co-sign, help both of them to co-sign. Well, at the time, I'm living in my building. At that time, I'm not thinking of buying a home. But, there's things that I still wanted to buy. The dream was, to get, a good car or whatever. And I knew that you had to have a decent credit score to qualify. And I thought about it, and, I wanted to help her, and I wanted to do it. After carefully thinking about it, I had to decline. I said, I really want to help you, but I can't take the risk. And I even said to her, I said, well, look at it. I said, your husband did something so wonderful as helping, her relative of his to co-sign, and look how they defaulted. She says, oh, we're not going to default. I said, I don't believe that you would, because things happen. You willfully default, but I can't take a risk. Now, you might be asking yourself, well, whatever happened to that friendship? I'll tell you what happened to the friendship. And this is what always happens when you tell people no, especially when they want you to co-sign. She basically stopped talking to me. She stopped dealing with me. She still said hello. She'd occasionally call me. Texting wasn't big back in those days. So, I can't say that she used to text me, but she kind of cut me off. She literally did. And when I say cut me off, it wasn't a fierce cut off. She would still speak to me every once in a while. If she's having a function, she'd invite me. But at this time, I knew that the friendship was already strained. And the only reason why the friendship was strained was because I did not co-sign for her. Okay? And at the end of the day, although I didn't co-sign for her, it kind of opened up a few things for me. I saw a few things. Honestly, she wasn't really a friend. Because if you ask me to put myself in a financial situation that's going to maybe harm me in the end, just like it had harmed her and her husband, and because I said no, protecting my financial security, and you basically stopped talking to me, obviously you just wanted to use me. So you never want to get into a situation. The moral of the story is that you never want to get into a situation where you're a co-signer and you're taking on loans in your name to help people. It doesn't work out. It's not a good idea. I know some of you might say, well, Mel, it's my family member, it's my sibling, it's my children, it's my parents. I understand. And make your decisions at your own discretion. I would never tell you how to live or how to, deal or build relationships with your family financially. But all I'm simply saying is that co-signing is not something that we should get into a habit of doing. It doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, when you co-sign for somebody and you want to move on with your life and you want to start purchasing things and, as I always say, leveling up your money, when you have those bills on your credit report, your debt to income ratio is extremely high. When you go into the bank to qualify for something, or you go to buy a car, whatever it is, or even that mortgage that you want to get at finally when you're ready for that big purchase, the bank is going to tell you that, you have too much debt. And God forbid that they defaulted on the loan. So now you got that. Basically, if her husband hadn't co-signed for, his relative, he would have never had that foreclosure on his credit report. Now, how long that takes to come off, I don't really know. I'm not really sure. I'd have to do some research if I was, interested in knowing about, removing a foreclosure. But you get what I'm saying. It is just not a good idea, and it's not something wise to do. All they're going to do is be mad at you. They're going to be like, he or she's a hater. They're mean. They're terrible. They leveled up, but now I need a little help. They don't want me to grow. Be it. So wear the bad hat. Let them think bad things about you. It's okay. They'll get over it, or they'll stop talking to you, or they'll slightly talk to you, just as the lady I told you did. She slightly, talked to me after a while. She barely spoke to me. And all because I wouldn't co-sign. So that just goes to show you how people really are when it comes to money and finances. They always say money is the root of all evil. I truly believe it is, because sometimes when money is an issue, people have, been unalived for money. People have supposedly lost friendships they thought they were genuine because of money. People have gone through so many things because of money. So again, you don't want to put yourself in situations, especially with that co-signing, where, your life or even just, your peace of mind is disturbed because of money. All right, the second boundary that I want to touch on quickly, and I've talked about it previously in my other videos, this whole idea of lending money. It's almost like the co-signing. Well, the bank was going to lend you money, but you got to stop lending people money. My solution is that when somebody comes to you to borrow money, you got to assess and look and say, okay, why is this person, trying to borrow money from me? The whole idea of lending and borrowing is not good. If they have to keep coming to you to borrow, obviously they're not in a good financial situation. As I've said before, when that borrower comes to you, you got to ask them, okay, if I loan you my money, how are you going to pay me back? What's your plan of action to pay me back my money? Because if you're borrowing from me constantly, where I got to keep lending you and giving you, at this point, you don't have a plan to pay me back my money. So we don't want to get into the idea of lending people money. Again, it might be a family member and we're doing it out of the goodness of our heart. But most times when you do these things, it ends up where, they resent you the one time that you say no or the one time that you couldn't really do it. You don't want to put yourself in that position. As I always say, set that boundary. You let them know, say, hey, listen, I can't keep lending you money. And you are not going to keep borrowing from me. But here's what I will do. I will give you something. I'll give you something. I'll help you. Let that be maybe the first and the last time. You got to set up boundaries. We got to set up financial boundaries with everything. The most important one that I think of the two that I mentioned, the co-signing and the lending/borrowing money, I think the one that, really resonates is this whole, as I said, co-signing thing. At the end of the day, whether you co-sign, which is basically when you're helping somebody to borrow money from a lender, or you're lending money to somebody you know personally, it sets you back, puts your financial goals back, puts back what you have to do. And at the end of the day, we got to address that elephant in the room. Many times when you say no, people don't deal with you. They stop talking to you. Think about it. I'm going to mention one last thing. When you go to borrow money from a bank or anywhere, and the bank says no, do you get mad at the bank? No, you don't get mad at the bank. You basically try and get the money from somewhere else. You try to co-sign, you try to borrow, or you try to ask somebody to co-sign, or you try to borrow money from somebody else. Well, do the same like what the banks do. Look at people's qualifications, okay, based on their track record. Look at their financial habits. Look at their behaviors overall when it comes to money. And if you realize or you notice that they're not good handlers of money, or their financial stability is poor, then you don't need to get involved with those people anyway. You don't need to co-sign anything for them, and you certainly don't need to lend them any money when they try to borrow. Beautiful people, I thank you so much for listening. If this was the first time you're joining me, my name is Mel. I'm here at Team U Finance. We talk about leveling up. We talk about growing our money. We talk about budgeting. We talk about words of inspiration. We talk about also, getting to that next level financially. I thank you so much for listening to my message. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.